The halls of Lincoln High buzzed every morning with the chaotic orchestra of teenage life-slamming lockers, half-finished gossip, laughter that bounced between classrooms, and the steady shuffle of sneakers on polished floors. But amid the noise, in the far left corner by room 204, sat 17-year-old Eli Turner, a boy so quiet that most students barely noticed when he was present or absent. His dark hoodie was always pulled halfway over his head, his notebooks filled with small, intricate sketches rather than words, and his seat third row by the window felt more like a refuge than a desk. Most people assumed Eli preferred silence. Some thought he was shy, others guessed he simply didn't care to socialize. But the truth was quieter, deeper, and a little sadder. After losing his father 2 years earlier, Eli had folded in on himself like a paper crane, beautiful but fragile, unable to unfold again without tearing somewhere along the crease. His mother worked double shifts, and though he loved her fiercely, home felt heavy with unsaid grief, so Eli chose stillness. And the world quietly allowed him to disappear. Yet despite the silence he kept around himself, Eli noticed everything. The way new students hesitated at the cafeteria doorway. The way teachers softened their tone around tired-looking kids. The way some classmates used humor as a shield. He noticed the lonely hearts, the overlooked kindnesses, and the small struggles that others sped past, perhaps because he carried his own. One chilly November morning, as the school buzzed with pre-winter energy, something shifted. The day began like any other. Eli slipped into school early, hoodie pulled tight, hands tucked in pockets. But as he turned the corner toward his locker, he saw a girl crouched on the ground, her backpack spilled open. Papers scattered like fallen leaves across the hallway floor. Students streamed around her, stepping over the mess, their conversations drifting like a careless breeze. Her name was Maya Brooks, a sophomore who had arrived only 2 weeks earlier. She was small, slight, with curly brown hair that framed her round glasses. Eli had noticed her the first day, her nervous smile, the way she hugged her books close, the way she seemed overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the school. Now, watching her reach for her papers while one student accidentally kicked her notebook farther away, Eli felt a familiar tug in his chest. For a moment, he hesitated. Stepping forward meant breaking his pattern, pulling himself out of invisibility. It meant risking being seen, but then he remembered something his father used to say. You don't have to be loud to make a difference. You just have to show up. And so Eli stepped forward. Wordlessly, he crouched beside Maya and began gathering her papers. She looked up, surprised, then relieved, her eyes softening behind her glasses. Thank you, she whispered. He offered a small nod. Together, they collected the scattered homework and slipped it back into her backpack. When they stood, Maya gave him a shy smile. I'm still figuring this place out, she admitted. Feels like everyone already belongs somewhere. Eli understood that feeling deeply. It gets easier, he murmured, though part of him questioned whether that was true. Still, he hoped it for her. She smiled again, this time a little warmer. I'm Maya. Eli, that was it. No dramatic music, no flash of destiny. Just two quiet kids exchanging names in a noisy hallway. But sometimes, stories begin in whispers rather than shouts. Over the next few weeks, Eli and Maya crossed paths more often, not because of fate, but because kindness has a way of drawing people toward one another. They sat near each other in English class, exchanged quick glances during roll call, and occasionally shared small conversations while walking out of school. Eli discovered Maya loved drawing almost as much as he did. She sketched flowers, faces, and places she dreamed of visiting someday. Eli's drawings were different cityscapes, shadows, silhouettes of people walking alone. One afternoon, Maya noticed a sketch peeking from Eli's binder, a boy sitting on a rooftop, looking out at a quiet, starless sky. It's beautiful, she said softly. Why does he look so lonely? Eli paused. No one had ever asked him that. Maybe he's waiting for something, he said. Or someone, Maya added gently. From that small exchange, a quiet friendship bloomed, not dramatic or full of grand gestures, just comfortable, steady, like sunlight slipping through blinds. The kind that doesn't demand attention but transforms a room anyway. Then came the day everything changed. It was the last Friday before winter break, a day usually filled with holiday excitement, but not for everyone. As Eli walked through the courtyard, snowflakes drifting lazily from a pale sky, he saw a crowd forming near the back steps. Students were murmurings, some curious, some amused, some indifferent. At the center of the circle stood Noah Price, a senior known for his loud laughter and sharper comments. Noah wasn't cruel, but he had a habit of playing too rough with people softer than him, and standing in front of him, clutching a handmade poster to her chest. Was Maya Ely's stomach tightened? The poster, covered in colorful drawings, was one she had worked on for the school's winter art showcase. She'd shown it to Eli just the day before, her eyes shining with pride and nervousness. It was a collage of small acts of kindness she had witnessed at school: someone giving up their seat on the bus, someone helping carry books, someone comforting a crying friend. She said she wanted to create something that reminded people their small actions mattered, but now that same poster was crumpled in Noah's hands. "It's just drawings." Noah scoffed. "Why are you acting like it's the Mona Lisa?" "It's mine," Maya said, voice trembling. "Please give it back." Noah smirked and held it just out of reach. "Relax. I'm just messing around." Another student laughed. Eli felt heat rise in his chest: anger, frustration, and something deeper, something brave. This was wrong. He knew what it felt like to shrink under someone's shadow, to feel invisible, powerless. He couldn't bear seeing Maya hopeful, Maya being small. In a moment she deserved to stand tall. He stepped forward. "Let it go, Noah," Eli said, his voice steady despite the pulse roaring in his ears. Noah turned, amused. "Oh, the quiet kid speaks." Some students chuckled. Maya looked at Eli, worry flickering across her face, but Eli didn't back down. "It's hers. Give it back." Noah rolled his eyes. "Relax, man. Just having fun." Eli moved closer, his gaze unwavering. "Not for her." For a long moment, the courtyard froze. Snowflakes drifted silently between them, settling on backpacks and boots. The crowd waited for drama, for something explosive, but instead, something unexpected happened. Noah looked at Eli eerily, looked at him, and something softened. Maybe he saw the resolve in Eli's eyes. Maybe he realized the joke wasn't funny anymore. Or maybe he recognized the courage it took for someone as quiet as Eli to step forward. With a sigh, Noah shoved the poster back into Maya's hands. "Fine, whatever." He turned and walked away, the crowd dispersing as quickly as it had formed. Some students whispered in surprise, others shrugged and moved on. But Maya stood there clutching her crumpled artwork, her eyes glassy with emotion. Eli approached her gently. "Are you okay?" She nodded, though tears gathered along her lashes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You didn't have to step in." "I did," Eli said simply, "because you would have done the same for me." She let out a shaky laugh. "I don't know about that. I'm not very brave." Eli shook his head. "You're the bravest person I know." Maya looked at him, really looked, and something unspoken passed between them. Something quiet but powerful. A recognition, a connection, the sense of being seen by someone who understood. But the moment wasn't finished. As Eli reached for the poster, he gently smoothed out the creases with his hands. "We can fix it," he said. "It's not ruined." Maya watched him carefully, her voice barely above a whisper. "Eli, why did you help me? You never step into things like that." Eli considered his answer. Then he said something he had never voiced to anyone. "Because when people stay silent, the world gets quieter. And sometimes the quietest hearts are the ones that need to rise first." Maya blinked, breath-catching. And in that instant, simple, unremarkable to passers-by, something profound happened. Not a grand transformation, not a cinematic revelation, but a spark. A small, bright spark of courage. Over the next week, word of the incident spread not dramatically, but quietly, in small ripples. A teacher heard from a student, who mentioned it in class, which made another student reconsider how they treated newcomers. Someone started holding the cafeteria door open for longer. Another student sat with a classmate who usually ate alone. Someone else left an anonymous note of encouragement in a locker. Kindness, like a chain reaction, moved through the school. But the most unexpected change happened within Eli. He began lifting his head a little higher, speaking a little more, smiling, sometimes, and people noticed. Not because he tried to be noticed, but because compassion has a way of making someone shine, even if they don't realize it. Maya's friendship deepened with him, too. They sketched together after school, shared stories, and walked home sometimes, when the winter sun dipped early below the horizon. For the first time in a long time, Eli felt lighter, like the weight he carried didn't have to be carried alone. One snowy evening, as they sat on the bleachers overlooking the football field, Maya leaned against him lightly. "You know," she said, "you changed things. That day, you changed me." Eli shook his head. "I didn't do anything special." "Yes, you did," she whispered. "You reminded me that even quiet people can make the world better. Sometimes with just one moment of courage." He didn't respond at first, but when he did, his voice was thoughtful, almost hopeful. "Maybe courage isn't loud," he said. "Maybe it's just choosing to care when it would be easier not to." Maya smiled. "Exactly." Months later, the winter art showcase took place. Students filed into the gym, admiring the colorful displays. Maya's poster hung proudly in the center, repaired, vibrant, powerful. At the bottom, in small letters, she'd added a caption, "Dedicated to the quiet hearts who rise when it matters." Eli stood beside her, hands in his pockets, trying not to look too moved. But he was more than he could ever express, and when his mother arrived, later still wearing her work uniform, tired but smiling, and saw her son's artwork beside Maya's, she wrapped her arm around him. "You're doing good, Eli," she said softly. "Your father would be proud." For the first time in years, Eli believed it. In the end, nothing miraculous happened. Eli didn't become class president or school hero. He didn't suddenly become popular or loud or outgoing. That wasn't his story. His story was quieter, like him. A small act of kindness. A moment of courage. A friendship that helped two lonely hearts feel seen. A poster that inspired a school to be gentler. And a reminder that change doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it rises softly. In the quiet hearts of ordinary people who choose to care. Winter slowly melted into spring, trading snowflakes for budding leaves and the soft hum of new beginnings. Yet something about Lincoln High felt different that year, subtle but unmistakable. Perhaps it was the way students lingered a little longer at their lockers to help someone, or the way teachers, noticing the shift, encouraged small gestures of empathy in class. No one pointed to a single moment that started it, but those who had turned their heads that day in the courtyard remembered. And among all the small shifts, the biggest one lived quietly inside Eli Turner, where once he used to walk with his head dipped low. He now noticed his steps had more steadiness to them. Not confidency wasn't there yet, but purpose. He still preferred quiet corners and soft conversations, still found crowds overwhelming, still struggled to open up, but something inside him felt less fragile, more alive. Like a door that had been closed for years was now cracked open, letting in a thin but steady beam of light. One afternoon in early April, Maya approached him with a flyer in hand. "Eli," she said, bouncing slightly on her toes, "they're doing a kindness initiative next month, student-led, and they want us to help with it." Eli blinked. "Us?" She nodded enthusiastically. "Mrs. Delaney saw your sketch in the art showcase and the dedication you put on my poster. She said you have a way of expressing things people feel but don't know how to say." Eli felt warmth rise in his cheeks. Compliments always made him uncomfortable, like stepping into unfamiliar sunlight. "What would we even do?" he asked cautiously. Maya held up the flyer, which read, "Quiet acts, loud impact, a month of small kindness. They want us to design the posters, the visuals," she explained. "Maybe even speak at the kickoff." Eli's stomach flipped. "Speak like, in front of people?" Maya softened. "Only if you want to, and we can do it together." He hesitated. Public speaking was his worst fear. Being seen was still something he wasn't used to, let alone being heard by a full gym of students. But then he thought about the courtyard, the moment he had stepped forward for Maya without planning to, without preparing for it. He thought about the poster she had created, now hanging in the main hallway, where students paused to read the caption. He thought about how courage had surprised him once before. Maybe it could surprise him again. "I'll try," he said quietly. Maya's smile was immediate and bright. "That's all you ever need to do. Try." The following weeks were unlike anything Eli had experienced. Students volunteered to help distribute encouraging notes, organize donation drives, and set up kindness boards where others could leave messages. The gym transformed into a workspace filled with paints, paper rolls, markers, and laughter. Maya was in her element, guiding, encouraging, planning. Eli watched her with admiration. She had grown to the girl who once trembled in the courtyard now stood comfortably in front of groups, sketching designs and explaining ideas. And Eli, he did what he did best. He created. He sketched the campaign's main poster, two hands lifting a small, glowing heart upward, surrounded by silhouettes of students reaching out to one another. It was simple, but powerful. Mrs. Delaney said it captured exactly what the initiative stood for. But the most daunting part, the kickoff assembly, loomed closer. 2 days before the event, Eli sat alone on the bleachers after school, staring out at the quiet football field. The sun dipped low behind him, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. He tapped his foot anxiously, rehearsing the words he couldn't seem to form. He didn't hear Maya approach until she sat beside him. "Nervous?" she asked, gently. He sighed. I don't know if I can do it. She nudged his shoulder. You said the same thing before you stood up to Noah. That was different. Not really. She paused. You didn't plan to be brave then. You just cared. Eli stared at the field. But what if I freeze? What if I mess up? Maya's voice softened. Then I'll be right there next to you. We'll freeze together. We'll mess up together. And we'll laugh about it later. He finally looked at her. Her eyes were steady, warm, unwavering. Do you trust me? She asked. He nodded without hesitation. Then trust this, she continued. Your quiet heart is exactly what this school needs to hear. For the first time, Eli allowed himself to believe she might be right. The day of the assembly arrived, with crisp air and loud chatter echoing through the gym. Students filled the bleachers, teachers lined the walls, and the stage was decorated with the posters Eli and Maya had worked on. Eli stood backstage, his hands trembling, heart hammering against his ribs. Maya stood beside him, offering a reassuring smile. You're going to be great, she whispered. When their names were called, they stepped forward together. The bright lights washed over them, and for a moment Eli felt frozen. Then he saw it in the crowd. Sitting near the middle was his mother, still in her apron from the diner. Exhaustion in her posture but pride glowing in her eyes. She had taken time off work, just to be here, just to see him, and that was enough. Eli took a breath. A deep, steady breath. Then he began. His voice was soft at first, barely reaching the back rows. But Maya stood beside him, her presence anchoring him, and he continued speaking about small kindnesses, about courage, about seeing others, about how even quiet hearts could change the world around them. He didn't speak long. He didn't need to. When he finished, the gym erupted into applause, not thunderous, but warm, supportive, and overwhelmingly sincere. And for the first time in his life, Eli felt something he had long believed he was too invisible to receive. He felt seen. In the months that followed, the kindness campaign became an annual tradition, one that teachers credited with shifting the school's culture in ways they had struggled to achieve for years. And those students graduated, and younger ones took their place. The story of the quiet boy who stood up for a friend and then found his own voice lingered. It wasn't a legend. It wasn't heroic. It wasn't dramatic. It was human, and that made it powerful. Eli and Maya remained close, their friendship deepening as they navigated the ups and downs of high school. They encouraged each other, learned from each other, and reminded one another what it meant to rise after falling. By the time graduation year arrived, Eli no longer hid behind his hoodie. He still preferred quiet spaces, still found comfort in sketching alone. But he smiled more easily, spoke with more assurance, and carried himself with a confidence that came not from being loud, but from knowing who he was. A quiet heart, a strong one that had risen, not for attention, but for love. Final message of the story. And so, the world learns something simple but profound. The bravest acts are often the softest. The strongest people are often the quietest, and sometimes, all it takes to change a life for a school or a community is one small moment of courage from someone who never believed they had any. Because when quiet hearts rise, the whole world listens.